Hi, this is Ben for learningsurfphotography.com. I'm going to go through my relatively quick first impressions review of the Liquid Eye C6000 water housing for the Sony a6000 camera. They also make the C6300, which is for the a6300 camera. Very similar in design, so I'll talk through a couple of issues which might be different between them, but generally speaking, very similar. So I've been using it for a couple of weeks now. Overall, really impressed. The lightest and smallest water housing I've used, full stop pretty much, and definitely the smallest one I've used for the a6000. I'm going to go through, my next video is going to be a comparison between this one and the other housings I've used. So this one's just concentrating on the C6000. So let's start off with a couple of details about the prices and the range of housings they do. So this setup, you can get, I've got flat port. This is the 55mm flat port, and this is the 4-inch dome port, which is for the Samyang 8mm fisheye version 1. I'll go into detail on that in a bit. So you can get this setup with the 2-stage pistol grip, the dome port, and a flat port for $950 US. Then for $750 US, you can get just the pistol grip, 2-stage pistol grip, housing, and flat port, no dome. Or for $600, you can get the housing with no pistol grip, flat port, no dome port. So just a flat port and the housing. And obviously it's got controls for shutter release and the various other controls on the backplate as well. So you can still use all the full functions of the camera. You just can't use the one-handed shutter release like you can when you've got the pistol grip. So for anyone taking surf photos, I would recommend going for the next one up, which is $750. And you'll get this pistol grip with it, which works really well. So it's one of the things I noted in my unboxing is this is a new type of pistol grip for me. There's no hole in the bottom of the housing. It's got a magnet switch in here. Don't know exactly how it works, but essentially when you pull this one back, and it really isn't very far that you have to pull it back, it's just a little bit, like 5mm or so, and that will engage the autofocus if you're using it with a lens with autofocus. So say I had my Sigma 19mm in the flat port and pulled that halfway down, or the kit lens, the 16 to 50mm kit lens, pull that in a little bit and that will lock on with the focus, and then pull it all the way back, nearly all the way back I guess, and then that will release the shutter. So it's really intuitive to use. You kind of put that little bit of pressure on when you're looking through the back, and you feel you see the focus go, and then pull it in to do the shutter. With a manual focus lens like this Samyang 8mm fisheye, which I use with the dome port obviously, that is fantastic with it as well. Obviously you don't get the half press, there's no need to autofocus this one. It's a manual focus lens, so you just pull it all the way in, and it's pretty good. You can just kind of, as you tend to do with a fisheye, you're paddling with one hand, you're in the barrel, it's that kind of critical, you're in the impact zone, you want to get close up in the barrel shots with the fisheye, so you just yank on that trigger and it'll go off. Never had any kind of issues with triggering the shutter with this pistol grip, so that's great. So talking of the pistol grip, someone mentioned in the comments that they were having issues with sand getting into the gap. There's like a rod here that goes into this molded pistol grip and slides back and forth. It's spring loaded, so it just pops back out. And mine's pretty responsive, it snaps back out pretty well. And the sand that I've encountered here in the UK, I've tried it out at a few different beaches now, and I've kind of rubbed this around in the sand to try and get some sand in there, and I haven't had any problems. I think that's because the beaches I've been at especially have had quite coarse sand. If you're in an area where the sand is really fine, then you might find that it starts getting in there. So I asked Liquid Eye about that, and there's a big kind of bolt here, it's like a grub screw I guess, that you can undo, and there's another little flathead kind of screw on the front and a little grub screw underneath. It's like a little FCS grub screw style, it's probably a bit smaller than that. So you can dismantle this. They sent me the procedure to do it. Obviously I've got no need to do it because I'm not having any problems, and if you shoot reef breaks, point breaks, or any areas which don't have really fine sand, I don't think you're going to have any issue with it as well, same as me. But if you do, then it's good to know that you can actually take that apart yourself. You don't have to send it in, and because it's there's not actually any holes in the housing, there's no chance of you ruining the waterproofing of the housing when you do it. So something you can do yourself. You can kind of service your own pistol grip, which is good. Next, I was going to talk about the cable on the inside. So I'm quite impressed. It's really small. I don't know if they mold it themselves or what, but it's the smallest right angle connector I've seen for a Sony multi-port. So which that really helps them get the housing as small as possible. There's barely any room around the camera at all. I'll pop it in a minute and you can see. But yeah, essentially it's as tight a fit as you can possibly get, and that really helps with this kind of molded connector, which I don't feel the same. I can just pull it out and no real issues. So next thing I want to talk about is the backplate. As you can see, it's got 4 bolts, 1 in each corner, and there, to tighten and loosen them, you use the tool that's provided, which is just a standard Allen key. So I've got a spare, which I just happen to have. Incidentally, it's quite useful. It's a pretty standard size. So for instance, if you use, this is a Connect GoPro bolt. So it's compatible with all the GoPro hardware. And that same Allen key fits in there. So I can use that to tighten, loosen my Connect bolts, the Liquid Eye. And I've got another tripod which has the same sort of size Allen bolt, so I can tighten up my tripod screw and things like that. So you do have to keep this on you, or keep an Allen key on you. It's good that it's standard though, so you just pop into any hardware shop and pick up a spare one. I'm just going to keep one with the housing, probably one on my keyring, and then one in my car or something like that. I'm known from experience from using my old Aquatech housing. Just so you know, it's a little bit smaller than the Aquatech one, so it's not the same size Allen bolts. But I know from experience from this one, it's worth having a spare Allen key on you whenever you can, just in case you forget it or misplace it at some point. One thing I've noticed is with the Liquid Eye, these bolts they're kind of stuck in there. There's a threaded section in the acrylic so that they can't fall out. It's brilliant. You're not going to lose them. They're always going to be there when you need them. And when you screw them in, I've got one, yeah, so that one's screwed in. You can see that it's recessed in there as well, so it sits really flush with the acrylic, which is a really nice touch. It just looks professional. Control wise, we've got buttons on the back, which obviously map to the buttons on the back of the camera. So everything you could need, pretty much everything I've needed. It's got video start stop, it's got menu, it's got your AEL, your function button, and then up, down, left, right on the kind of rear dial. You can't spin that rear dial, but you can press up, down, left, right, and the center button is like OK, and then playback and your C2 custom 2 button. And then on the top you've got on off, shutter release, C1, and both top dials. So you've got your mode selection dial and you've got your top dial which controls your settings. So really good selection of controls. Haven't felt like I needed any more controls, and there's hardly any more on there. So good selection of controls on there. There's also zoom control on the side, which is really useful. I'll put some video up now of I was testing the kit lens in there. I don't have the kit lens myself, so I have got the flat port which is compatible with the kit lens, but I use the Sigma 30mm or Sigma 19mm f2.8 lenses in there. So they're the ones I've used and tested this with, and it works great with those. But I've had a quick go with a kit lens just on land, and basically this zoom control engages with the little rocker switch that's on the side of the lens. It's a power zoom lens, so you just move this slightly down or slightly up and it will move the rocker switch correspondingly inside, and that will give you a nice control over the zoom. So pretty useful for shooting video especially, I'd imagine. It's tempting me to pick up the kit lens. Haven't gone for it yet, but I do really like the results I'm getting from the video with the 30mm especially. So much so that I've ordered a bigger lens port, which is a bit longer, so I can fit my Sigma 60mm in there, which is one of my favourite lenses. So I can shoot some video with that, just see what it's like. Quick roundup of the lens ports. You've got the dome port for the Samyang 8mm f2.8 v1 fisheye. Importantly, isn't compatible with the slightly bigger v2 fisheye. Hang on, there we go. So you can cut off the lens hood on this one and it should work. But they are working on Liquid Eye working on a port for the V2. So if you've already got the a6000 and the V2 Samyang f2.8 fisheye 8mm, then hang tight or get in touch with Liquid Eye. They might even have got it ready by now. If you haven't got either of them and you're really keen to get it quickly like I was, then the V1 is a great lens, and you can use that with the port they've got ready at the moment. So yeah, 3 flat ports and soon to be 2 dome ports, and no doubt more on the way as well, but those are the standard ones that you can get now. An extra port is $150 for the flat ports. I think it's a bit more for the dome. Let's see what's next. Oh yeah, the leash that's included with it. So really comfy, really useful, just the right length. Definitely don't need it any longer. And if you do happen to let go, first of all, it floats, which is a great thing. Bright colors, floating, that's a good shout. And it won't, because the leash is quite short, it's not going to swing around and bash you in the head or anything dramatic like that. It should just bob there nicely at arm's length for you. So, video, right, so yeah, this is the first, well, I've got this Nikon, Neewer, I think Polaroid. They brand it up in quite a few different ways, but I believe the company make it called Nikon. This is a dive style housing, so no pistol grip, and you have to press the shutter on top. This one's got a pause record button, but this is the first surf housing I've used with the pause record. So when I say pause record, I mean video pause and record. I don't know if that's obvious or not, but yeah, essentially I've shot some video with it. A couple of people asked whether it would overheat, whether I thought that this one might be susceptible to overheating, because it's obviously super tight fit on the body, and some people have experienced the a6000, and I know some a6300 users have reported it overheating as well when you're recording for a long time. I think the a6300 is probably more of an issue because it shoots 4K and it's a very similar sized body. The a6000 not so bad because it only shoots 1080p, but I've shot 1080p 60 frames a second at the highest bit rate available, and the longest kind of single bit of recording I did was about a minute and a half. So I think realistically, even the longest wave in the world, you're shooting with a camera in the water, you're not going to be shooting for that long, maybe 15-20 seconds, unless you're doing something specialist where, I don't know, there's a lot going on, and maybe it's a boat race or I don't know, kite surfing or something I'm not thinking of, just snorkeling. Perhaps you'd be in there longer and perhaps you would have overheating problems, but for surf photography, which is naturally what learningsurfphotography.com is all about, I don't think you'll have any issues at all with it overheating. I certainly didn't, and yeah, I don't think there's a reasonable test I can do really to show you if that would be an issue, but generally speaking, should be no worries. Next, I've got flash. So on the inside here, there is actually a little recessed section for the pop-up flash, which is quite cool. I'm just going to pop it in there now so you can see how it goes in. Won't be a sec. So first of all, what you do is pop this right angle connector in. So that sits quite flush there. Then you've got to put it in the on position. So that's pretty critical that you get that, and then you line up the switch. I had a couple of issues because user error. I tried to put it in with the switch, the on-off switch, in the wrong position, and that is going to cause problems. So just make sure you remember to switch the camera on before you put it in. Then you just slide it in, it goes in, it's nice and snug. pretty easy to go in like that. So in some of the photos I've seen on the Liquid Eye Instagram, this section is kind of tucked underneath. I just leave it like that. It fits fine, doesn't cause any problems with the seal, and I only use the viewfinder once it's inside the housing. There's a few settings like that, where like switching it manually to viewfinder, the power save settings, and a few other bits and pieces which will really help you preserve your battery life when it's in the housing. So I'm going to do a whole separate post on learningsurfphotography.com about that, because I think it's going to be useful for not only the Liquid Eye housing, but for Salty, for Acrotech, for the Mecom, for any housing you're using with the a6000. So there'll be a little extra blog post at some point about the settings that I'm using. But yeah, essentially that's that. My battery's dead in this housing here, so in the camera here, or rather there is no battery in the camera, so I can't show you it going off. But basically, you pop the pop-up flash up like that, and that sits in that little recess section. And I've tried that with, I stuck a kind of third-party GoPro mount, little circular one, on the top with some 3M sticky back, sticky stuff, like sticky tape. It was fine, but I noticed that this third-party one is a bit loose. It's actually aluminium, and it's not, doesn't kind of squeeze tightly enough when you tighten up the bolt to grip my flash in place and keep it in exactly where I want it. So I'm going to swap that one out for an official GoPro plastic one. I'm just going to do the same thing, cut out a little circular bit of sticky back 3M tape, and then put the official one on there. And flash wise, I'm using this nano flash. So this one's Fujifilm, but they're also labeled up as fantasy sometimes. But essentially, if you find a nano flash for dive photography, you're going to find something like this. It's really small, quite powerful. It's got slave mode, so I just put that on top like that, and then with the pop-up flash up, release the trigger. There's enough light coming through this housing to trigger this flash and give you a nice bright burst. I am going to have to go inside there, and I'm going to have to kind of put some black card in there, I think, just to stop this bit lighting up, so there's no reflections on the inside of the dome on the shots, which is what I'm getting at the moment. But shouldn't be a problem, should be able to do that. Top tip, if you are going to try doing this, first of all, get in touch with Liquid Eye first and ask them, because they can open this up apparently, this little kind of groove here, and then you'll be able to use the pop-up flash more effectively. I didn't do that before I got mine. I'm just in such a rush to get my hands on it. I got quite an early version, and I didn't think to ask about that. So top tip though, if you are going to be doing anything with a pop-up flash, remember before you pull the camera out, you've got to just replace the flash back in. Otherwise you're going to be pulling it out, and that's going to get caught on the inside of this housing, and that's going to be bad news for your flash or your camera. So yeah, just a little mention about the flash. I'll put links to the nano flash and the various bits of hardware that I needed to get that on top underneath in the blog post on learningsurfphotography.com. So yeah, that's it really. Let's see, I'll show you getting it out. You can get it, you just kind of lever it out side by side. It's a really tight fit, but it does come out fairly smoothly if you're just careful and take your time, like so. Let's just unplug this. There we go. So yeah, just looking at the backplate again, I've just remembered you get the rubber eye cup, which is really good, and I had no issues at all looking through this and using the viewfinder for my 30mm and my 19mm. Didn't really bother with a fisheye because there's no need, you can just fire away. Useful for reviewing the shots though, you can see it through there. So if it's overcast, or if it's early morning or late evening when the light's really nice, then you'll have no problems at all looking through there. I did shoot once when it was really bright sunlight, kind of directly overhead, and what I found was the light kind of came through the top of this acrylic and was causing, I couldn't really, like enough glare, I suppose is what I'm trying to say, causing glare through there, so I couldn't see through the eyepiece into the viewfinder clearly. So I found just putting my fingers along the top, just kind of shading the top of the acrylic, stopped that light getting through, and I could see much clearer. So I think what I'll probably do in the future is maybe cover that up with a bit of tape or something if I am going out in bright bright daylight. Generally speaking, not the best light for photography anyway, so normally I wouldn't be out like in blazing hot sunshine, but I just wanted to try this out in as many different situations as possible. Try and give you a bit more of a balanced review, even though I've only had it for just over a month or so, I think. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up my quick review of the Liquid Eye C6000. I've not had any issues with it. I think it's been really good. I think if you've ordered one already, you'll be stoked. And I think if you're on the fence, then in fact, the best bet if you're on the fence between this and a different housing is to hang tight a little bit, because I'm going to be doing another video which will compare this to the other housings that I've used for the a6000. That includes the Mekon Dive housing, the Salty Surf housings basic, and my old DSLR housing that I converted. So that'll give you an idea of the pros and cons of each one, which one I'll be sticking with myself, and reasons why you might want to go for a different option to me. And I think there are a few different options which would be better for different people. So yeah, if you're on the fence, bear with me, subscribe to the channel, and I'll get that up as soon as I can. One other little issue that I noticed, someone put a comment on learningsurfphotography.com saying that they noticed that sometimes the camera became unresponsive and you couldn't change any of the settings or anything when it was in the housing. I noticed that myself as well, and the reason was this trigger on the pistol grip was pushed in a little bit, and that can happen especially if you've got the dome port with the neoprene dome cover. Then that can push it in a little bit, and you've got to remember to push that out afterwards, because if it's pushed in, your camera is constantly trying to find focus or set exposure if it's a manual focus lens, and that will prevent it going to sleep, and it will heat up, and it will mean that you can't actually access any of the other controls. So the only thing you can do is release the shutter at that point. So just remember to push this out afterwards. If it is caught on the neoprene, just push it out and you won't have that problem. Won't have that problem at all. So yeah, another little top tip. Don't think there's anything else I can remember. If there's anything that I've forgotten, I'll try and bring that up in the next one, which is a comparison. And yeah, so subscribe. Head to Liquid Eye's website. I'll put links below for all of the details. In fact, the address is www.lewhs.com, liquideyewaterhousings.com. So lewhs.com. Head there and you can request, well, basically you fill in the contact form and say, this is my camera, this is what I'd like. But yeah, really, really great, lightweight, well thought out. They've already made a couple of changes to this design. This was a really early one of the first ones that I could get my hands on. So they've changed a couple of things, just tweaked it to make it a bit more usable. It's available in different colors as well, though I'd recommend going for a nice bright one like this yellow, just so it's more visible if you do let go of it. And yeah, hopefully that's everything. If there's any questions or anything you'd like to know about this housing, then stick a comment below, either on YouTube or on learningsurfphotography.com, or email me. The address is ben@learningsurfphotography.com, and I will do my best to answer those questions. And if it's in time, then I'll put it in the next video as well, which is the comparison. And yeah, so keep the questions coming. I've had a few so far. Hope you're really enjoying it if you've already got one, and hang tight if you're still on the fence. Thanks very much.